join me in the pledge of the flag? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, all people are present. There are no agenda modifications. Speakers, please. Thank you. There are no agenda modifications. And the first order of business is Remington Property Group, who are here this evening to request from the board a referral to the Planning Commission for amendment to the zoning ordinance to permit a mixed-use community in a commercial zoning district. And also for the record, Madam Secretary, I will be recusing myself from voting in this matter. As a realtor, I'm involved in the project. However, I will reserve the ability to comment. Mr. Best.
Good evening. My name is Jay Best. I'm president of Remington Property. I have to say I've never attended a public meeting where we're first on the agenda. My hat is off to you. Very courteous of all of you to do that. We're here today, as Mr. Eichenberg said, to consider the Allen Oregon property. With me today is Dennis Blacken, our planner, who many of you know. He's done work with the township before. And David Gill from Weiss, Director of Architecture. We have met with the Planning Commission. We have been asked by them to come before all of you to seek your guidance on moving forward. We're preparing an ordinance which we delivered to the township in the middle of January. We would like to have that ordinance considered by the Planning Commission at your direction. And on that note, I'll turn it over to Dennis to give you some background on what our concept is. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Dennis Blacken. I'm President of Blacken Thomas Panzak. We're land planners and landscape architects, and we're located in Fairleigh, Pennsylvania. I have 2 boards and 1 PowerPoint slide to show you tonight. It'll just take about 5 minutes of your time to give you an overview of what we're requesting. We're requesting an amendment to your zoning ordinance. It is not a map change, it's a zoning ordinance text change. The current zoning on the property is C commercial. This is the Allen Oregon site, Route 100, goes across the center of the plan. The property under consideration is this reddish area entitled site. The letters indicate the existing zoning on the property, and you can see along Route 100, it's zone C on the north side. On our side, there's an area in the borough of general commercial, and then once you get into the township, it's commercial. Our site's commercial. The other side is industrial.
Can I stop for 1 second? Do you mind just backing up and turning it a little bit more, just so members of the audience can see as well, please? I think that's pretty good. That's a good way to get a view, yeah. Can you see it, sir?
Close the work.
All right.
Residents do.
The blue is the industrial zoning, and you can see that there is a piece of the property along Gaines Road that's zoned industrial, but virtually the entire site is zoned C commercial. You have the railroad tracks, the Conrail branch on the southern portion of the property, and you have more residential generally to the south. So what we're asking for is to leave the C commercial in place and to add an additional use, which we're calling a mixed-use development. This would be a new use. The use would be called mixed-use community, and it allows all the current uses that are in your commercial zone, but it adds multifamily as a residential use, which you do not have in your commercial district. So that's really the biggest change that we're requesting. Some of the highlights of the draft ordinance, and we've exchanged a couple of drafts with the township and got some input from the Planning Commission when we met with them several months ago. Your planner has provided us with input. Right now, the way it's drafted, and again, subject to further discussion certainly with the township, there's a minimum tract size of 20 acres. The site under consideration is about 36 acres. It would establish area and bulk requirements, primarily new ones for the multifamily use because you have area and bulk requirements for your commercial uses. This would be a conditional use, so even after if the zoning amendment were approved, we would come back to you for a conditional use application and then go into land development. The site would have to have public water and sewer. We'd have to have frontage on an arterial highway like Route 100. Pedestrian and bike routes would be coordinated and required to be part of the development. And the open space on the plan that you see behind you is approximately 40%. So there would be a good amount of open space on the site. In terms of the apartment requirements, the ordinance is set up with minimum sizes for the apartment units. We are requesting a density of 10 units to the acre with the ability, if we do certain incentives, that we would be able to get that to 12 units to the acre. So we get a list of incentives in the ordinance in terms of green building, sustainability, things of that nature, that if we met those requirements and the board agreed, that it could be an additional 2 units of density. The proposed apartment buildings are a mix of 3- and 4-story buildings. 4 stories would be about 50 feet height, which is your limit currently in your commercial zone. There would be architectural standards in the ordinance, and the township would have some ability to review the architecture, materials, colors, things of that nature. And because this is integrated development, integrated mixed-use development, there would be the need to have cross easements, common stormwater management, common access, and things of that nature. I have an elevation, a sample elevation of what the 4-story building could look like, because I know that's been an issue of some concern with the township. This is a development that is proposed in Plymouth Township, near where 476 is, the Pennsylvania Turnpike. It's the same architect that we've been working with partners, and it's actually very similar to our plan in that we have this shows a kind of central green, which is similar to what is proposed on the plan, although ours is wider than that. That would give you a flavor for what the units would look like. That's a quick summary of the ordinance, and as Jay said, we're requesting your permission to move forward with this and continue our conversations with the Planning Commission, your staff, and hopefully be back before you in a couple months for a public hearing. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dennis. Any questions from the commissioners?
I might have one other speaker.
Sure, absolutely.
David Gill from Place, State Supervisors.
Good evening, my name is Dave Gill, I'm the Director of Architecture for White Market. And as you know, we have been, had a long time community partner here with our store across the street. We think this is a great development. We are anxious for its success. One of the things that we think is that we've been a good community partner for a long time, but we think that Macungie here is deserving of something more of a modern store, modern grocery store, and what we have across the street, although good, is not 100% what we consider for a modern one. We want to be able to serve the community better. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have, or but we're very pleased with what is proposed, and I think it would be a very successful development.
Any questions from any commissioners?
Not so much a question, but just a clarification, because it's not really clear on the plan. I believe when we met with them earlier, they had expressed an interest also to include a gas station on this site somewhere. Is that still in the
Correct.
in the consideration? So yes. And I think also when we discussed it at the Planning and Zoning Committee meeting, that we could please just touch on the slope of the land and the crest, and that high point is more through the Allen, Oregon site, so that the apartment complex will be more or less not concealed, but down the hill a little bit, so they can
Unless,
You won't-
unless visible from Route 100.
That's
okay, it
visible
said.
from Route 100.
That is, correct me if I'm.
Actually, why don't you look up here, sir?
Oh, I can certainly do that here. The ridge is approximately through here, so this is approximately the high point of the site. It slopes down to the road in this direction and then down to the wetlands in this direction. So,
It's 35 feet of grade difference, so Route 100 and the rail line are at the same elevation. So you've got a southern sloping side and a northward sloping side.
one of the things that we had talked about, and one of the things that is a concern, is the height of these overall buildings. And in this situation, especially with the architecture that you have and the distance and the slope that you have, most of this is going to be really turned into a really quiet neighborhood, back here. It's not going to be visible very much at all, except for, past the height of this building. This is 25 feet, and these trees are all very tall. But this ends up being this nice, quiet neighborhood that you're trying to, develop a mixed-use community. Was that answering your question?
Yeah, no, that answered, I just wanted to bring that up. I'll also say, when I discussed it with them at our meeting, I also expressed concern that I really wanted to see something called a walkable community. It's a planning catchphrase anymore, I'm hearing it more, but it's a community where there's pedestrian and bikeway facilities that allows you to get to surrounding commercial centers, the borough, and to our recreation facilities, and to our bikeway system that we're now designing. So I'm going to encourage the planning commission to include that in their review of this.
To amplify that, Mr. Brown, we like that concept. We're very supportive of having a town center feel to the extent that we can on this appreciate a lot. But you'll notice here, we've taken kind of from Sarah's direction, the notion that you come in on a divided landscape entry road to a roundabout, which will have fountain or clock tower or one of the things in your ordinance. Here, Weiss is open to having their new cafe. If you know Wegmans, this is the same kind of concept. They're a new prototype, which is a wonderful store. So you've got an outside cafe here, and here you have the entrance to the residential. You have the leasing office, the community center, the pool, the gym. So it becomes a place of congregation. You slow down as you go around the roundabout, and we think that's going to, and then depending on what we do up here, there may be food up there or other kind of community activity stuff. Questions?
Questions from the commissioners? Mr. Reese?
Yes, thank you. How many units? It looks like there's going to be 6 apartments. How many?
This plan shows 240 units.
240. Thank you. Are they going to be 1, 2, or 3 bedroom mixed, or?
85 or 90% will be 1 and 2 bedrooms. There'll be a few 3 bedrooms. The 2 4-story buildings will have elevators. The apartment developer we've been working with feels that in general this will be the younger 22 to 30-year-old group of people. The people who haven't really got a household formation yet, who in time will move to townhouses or single-family homes. But there's also a market for people over 50 who want elevator buildings. We've considered maybe even putting some parking on the first level of the building, some on the down the building. But it's 1 and 2 bedrooms.
Thank you.
The only comments I have, Mr. President, there's 2 issues I would warn you. And I believe we've discussed this back when I was on the staff level.
Do you have your microphone?
Oh, I'm sorry. That would be the density. There's still a question as to density. This is denser residentially than our highest density residential district to date. So this would be kind of setting a planning precedent that I feel is going to take our current ordinance out of balance. So, and again, the planners, I don't have a problem with this going to the planners, but I warn you on density will probably be an issue. At least it will be with me. The other issue will be the recreational component of this. I don't feel this site or this particular ordinance needs a special recreation component. I think our recreational component that we have in Salvador right now is perfectly workable across the board, no matter what zone you're in. So again, I would warn you that it's not the nature of the township to meet your monetary requirements for the site. It's within your goal to work within our ordinances for good planning. So those are the two basic things that I have a little bit of an issue with.
I'm just curious, can you give a little bit of background as to how you got to this point? Just a little bit of history.
Allen, Oregon has had this site on and off on the market for maybe 10 years. You all saw a plan from 2005, I'm sorry, with Weiss. Weiss has been in with a plan, I think in 2005, 2006. The notion as all commercial was that you had to build stores here across. You would have the typical lineup of a grocery store and a Staples and a Kohl's or whatever. There is no market on the back side of a ridge line behind a sales office to put retail stores, and there is no parking to accommodate big box retail. And you certainly aren't going to put a laundry and a shoe repair store back in there. So a couple of times, people have looked at it, you cannot do all commercial on this site. There's no economic or feasible way to do it. So we came up with this notion of why not try to integrate it. It started with the notion of a lifestyle type center, community center. There are some examples in Maryland that we started with. But it has evolved to this concept, and it's been about a year that we've been working on this with the I just would point out one other thing. The Swabia Creek is a high-quality stream, and there is a 150-foot buffer. That severely constrains the developability of this site. We wouldn't, a residential developer wouldn't probably ordinarily put this kind of density configuration like that. Our first plan had 9 buildings in the township, so that's too many in that little area. So that's why we went to the 4th story and 2 buildings, cut it to 7 buildings. But Swabia Creek and the buffer really constrained. There's about 7 to 8 acres in the buffer area. This corner piece is on your map as karst topography, probably undevelopable. Suppose it's marked in red that has sinkholes. So now you've got 9 acres of the 20 that's residential that can't be touched or developed. And then the strong requirements for stormwater management. We have to over-contain. That's creating additional constraints on the developability of what's left to build something.
Thank you, Mr. Mist. Any other commission comments? Is there any public comment? Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Scott Bieber. I have to say I totally support the idea of going with the mixed use. I think that's a great thing to do. And I would just add on to Jim Lansick's comments. I think that the Board of Commissioners ought to send this to the Planning Commission with a directive that they basically ignore everything on that plan and just sit down and come up with a real good mixed use concept for that tract of land, and then expect the developer to adjust to that. For instance, I'm not so sure. I don't know, I don't like, there's just certain aspects of it. I didn't want to get into a lot of the details about it, but I just don't think the Planning Commission should take this as that and try to make minor adjustments to it. I think this is a great opportunity for the township to really develop a good mixed-use zone here. and they ought to just look at the land as a raw piece of land and come up with the best mixed-use ordinance that you can apply to this, and then expect the developer to meet that requirement. I personally have no objections to maybe some multifamily housing or apartments like that. One thing I would note, I would ask Mr. Weiss, are you planning on moving out of if this goes through, you would move out of that store and move into this store?
Correct.
Well, is there going to be any provisions to make sure that the original Weiss store doesn't sit vacant for a long period of time?
That's not within our.
Yeah, it's just,
Weiss owns that store.
yeah, and then, where would the gas station be? Well, I don't know. Well, anybody, you mentioned probably a gas, like what is proposed in the front, right along Route 100?
Mr. Bieber, can you address your question to the board, please?
Yes. Yes, what are the structures that are shown in the front? Or what would be in the front, between the road and the parking
To
lot?
my knowledge, they are going to be retail pad sites.
Okay,
Some type of retail.
yeah, I think that's
Not,
good.
look at this as a raw plan, Mr. Bieber, where you have commercial up front, you have the apartments in the back, and then it's gonna, the plan is gonna evolve from there. So as you said, this is being forwarded to the Planning Commission to consider the mixed-use ordinance, because the township does not have a mixed-use ordinance.
Right, I understand.
And I think I agree with you that it's a good opportunity for the township to bring in a mechanism for this kind of smart development, smart growth. So now, at this point in time, now this is just a concept design that the developers come up with. It's a work in progress.
Great. I like the idea that you would have like some kind of stores or shops in the front as a buffer between the road and the parking lot. I think that's a
And
good
the rest of the
idea.
site will develop according to Weiss's particular needs, and their needs are going to change over time.
Right.
Now, they have a prototype design now for X amount of square feet, and the fueling station, there's no set place where that's going to be at this point in time.
Right.
That's going to be up to the Planning Commission and the developer to work out a mutually agreeable final plan, which will then come back before us for approval.
One of my last comment would be with the landscaping. I would hope that the commissioners would insist that the landscaping that goes in there be mature landscaping, not 3-inch caliber trees, but 6-inch caliber trees. Somewhat mature landscaping right from the start, instead of, for instance, what's over right across the street at the Weiss Market now. You put in small shrubbery, it takes 20 years until you get mature landscaping. I think that the attitude should be taken, this developer wants to come in here, this is an attractive place to live. I think the township should insist that all the landscaping that goes in there is relatively mature landscaping right from the start. I know it's more expensive, but I just think that's something I think that the township should be proud of what it's going to look like. And this notion we're allowing this landscaping that I've always felt the township landscaping requirements were not hefty enough. I think.
We appreciate your thoughts.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Hearing none, any other further commissioner follow-up? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. Looking for a motion to recommend that this project be sent on to the Planning Commission.
I'll make that motion, Mr. President.
And a second? I'll second. Having a first, motion and a second to approve that this project be moved on to the Planning Commission. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And one abstention. Mr. Remington, your project is approved for submission to the Planning Commission.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations. next item on the agenda is public comment on non-agenda items. Any public comment? There's a gentleman. Mr. Hamlin.
Hello, thank you for allowing me
Can you
to.
sign in and tell us your name, please?
I signed in.
Sign in.
Yep. My name is Robert Hamill. I'm the owner of East Bend Investment Services. I'm the past Vice President and Finance Chair of the East Bend School Board, and I'm a Republican candidate for the state rep for the 134th District. Been a 30-year resident of Lower Macungie Township, and I own a farm on the Little Lehigh Creek, and I've fought for Little Lehigh Creek environmental enforcement for years. I've successfully sued the previous board in 2007 over a development, and this was with cooperation from both the county, state, and the wildlands. The lawsuit was successful, and this was a zoning issue. So what I would like to talk to you is about the Jandal rezoning of the 700 rezoning of the 700 agricultural acres. There's unintended economic consequences to this decision. As a past vice president of the East Bend School Board, I can tell you that the high school right now is adequate. It doesn't have that much more capacity. And there are calls to build a new high school in Lower Macungie. If we do get another development of 700 homes, you're probably going to necessitate more school building. Now, new high schools cost $100 million plus. There's a $150 million debt presently that the school district has. So you're going to be looking at using napkin addition, $250 million of debt to the school district. What's that going to do? It's going to increase real estate taxes. We're probably in a state of permanent economic slowdown for the foreseeable future.
Bob, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. Okay. I don't want to get into what this will do to Little Lehigh Creek. It's right on the banks, but it'll turn Little Lehigh Creek, help turn it into a seasonal drainage ditch. In summary, it would be easy for you to drop the lawsuit and go back to the old zoning. If anybody wants to challenge the zoning, then do it legally. The Lehigh County judge declared the last zoning illegal. Laws are laws, and laws are there for a reason. Laws are not made to be hastily changed on an arbitrary basis. Please drop the suit against the Jandal rezoning ruling and start from the beginning to give this important matter the public hearing that it demands. And thank you for allowing me to speak for 3 minutes. So,
Thank you for your presentation.
thank you.
Yes, sir.
Lights. Thank you.
Before I make my comments, I would just want to make one comment to the gentleman that spoke before me. All municipalities, school districts and so forth, their biggest problem is the unfunded pension liability. And that all started with the state, and it's passed down, and we're all suffering about it. It's a big, big part of it. I would like to revisit the hybrid problem. Last time, it was pointed out by Ben that there's 582 hydrants, and Four Seasons of Farmington has 6. Well, we have a contest going on out there. We only have 5, Ben. So anybody that finds the 6th one is going to get a prize. Now, I bring up the hybrid situation because Mr. Erdman was astute, and with the help of your wonderful secretary, went back and did some researching and found resolution number 2001-38. And in that resolution, it was $15,000, not $18,000, that was paid to the township for the permanent maintenance of those hydrants. In that same resolution was $30,000 for the traffic impact. You gotta put in the traffic light at Sauerkraut. You gotta do all kinds of things. So you're correct, it was. Now, I bring up the hydrant thing very simply, because my concern is, and of course, this letter that was written by the gentleman on the committee, I didn't even know the letter was coming. And Bruce responded to the gentleman, and he has followed up your recommendation, Bruce. He's contacted Lehigh County Authority. They're going to respond to it, and they're going to help them solve the pain problem. The second one, I pointed out to them, the township would like to have a second speed control. It's just not.
Joe, you have 1 minute, just let you know. You have 1 minute.
Oh, okay. I just want to come back to the hydrant problem. And going back the financials for the last 3 years, okay? As you know, we're paying close to $137,000 for the rental of hydrants. Actual for 2010, the cost comes out to $19.68 per hydrant. Budget was $20. Actual for 2011, it came out to $19.68. Budget, $20.05. This contract that you made with Lehigh County Authority was made in 2/10/81. That's 30 years ago. Well, I'll tell you something. You take 10 years, it's $1,374,000. You take 20 years, it's $2,749,000. You take 30 years, it's $4,124,000. Mr. Lessig, you pointed out, everybody's pointed out. I just encourage you, I know it's difficult, but I think you should revisit that contract with Lehigh County Authority. This is ridiculous, the amount of money that we're paying for the rent. And on top of that, we're not sure that we're getting all the inspections. We're concerned about our 5 little hydrants if they're being inspected. And I'm sure you people are concerned about your remaining 577. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comment on non-agenda topics? Moving on to the next item on our agenda. Mr. Kaufman, communication.
Yeah. Mr. President, the first letter comes from Bill Mayo. He's attaching a fax sent February 7th of 2012, which highlights the difficulties he's having with his residence that existed since the 1800s, but still has no valid location address. As previously emphasized in his correspondence, the inappropriate method of assigning house numbers can lead to serious consequences if not corrected. He recently changed insurance companies, and the appraiser had a hard time finding his house. I know Mr. Urban did send an email out I think in the last couple of days, and I think the board hopefully got it. And I think Bill knows more. I think your office does the assigning of numbers, correct?
Yes. The address is signed correctly. What's unusual about this situation is that the access road for the property comes off of Route 100 north of the property. So if you look at the sequence of the numbering going south, it is correct. The problem is that if you follow that numbering, this house sits in the back, but the driveway is further up. And I made a suggestion to Ben, he and I spoke about it, that one of the possibilities would be to put a sign on the driveway indicating that that address is down that driveway. That's the real problem. It's a very long driveway that goes around to the rear. And numerically the house number is right, but it doesn't fall sequentially along the road because the driveway sits further to the north. If Ben wants to comment on it, I think that's the basic problem.
Bill, does he have any frontage on Trexlertown Road?
I don't believe so. Well, he probably has frontage where the driveway is.
Yeah, I think just
the
the
lot
driveway.
itself, yeah, the lot, and I'm not sure if he actually owns that, but the lot itself doesn't front Route 100.
But, so he comes out to an alleyway, or does
He comes out, there's a private drive that accesses 100 that goes to the rear of the lots. I didn't look that closely at the property.
There's a cross easement.
This is a cross easement, okay, so he doesn't have frontage, then it's a cross easement.
But, you know, I could see what he's saying, is his house sits behind unit 1322 and 1344, which is why he assigned 1334 as his number, but his driveway is you know, a quarter of a mile up the road between units 1248 and 1252.
Right.
I can understand you going, the guy's looking for his driveway, he's not going to be looking up by 1252, he's going to be looking up at you know, 1322, and he's going to say it doesn't exist. So I understand where he's coming from. I don't know if there's a fix we can do, or whether it just be simple enough to reassign a number in there.
You could reassign the number, or as I said, you could put a sign on the driveway designating that the address is down that driveway. I mean, the interesting thing is that address has been there for a number of decades. I mean, these addresses, I think, were originally signed in the early 1980s, if not earlier, and this is the first time this has come up. So my thought would be one person from outside the area of difficulty. I don't know that this is a common problem, because I never heard it before. But it can be changed if you want, although I think putting the sign on the driveway is directing the property down there, because if it changes, it will be his address that will change.
Does anybody live in the house right now, or is it empty?
Yes,
that's where he lives.
You know, lives there.
So he would have to change all his correspondence and everything, I don't know if he realized that, but we're not going to change the neighborhood, we're going to change that one property.
All right, you know, I'm not opposed. If he wants to change his address to something up there between 1252 and 12...
Could be done.
Actually 1248 and 1250 are reversed, if I look at this thing right. But this property is in Lower Macungie, his driveway is in Upper Macungie, so does changing an address also affect Upper Macungie?
We coordinate with him, but I don't think so, because it's the property that you're addressing.
If he wants to go through the process, I don't have an issue with it, but I don't know.
I mean, again, I wonder if he knows the unintended consequences that everything has to be changed. Because usually when you change addresses, there's a lot of pushback.
Just one quick comment. It just occurred to me, though, that if his address is here between 1 and 3, so he's number 2, and he wants his property sits between 4 and 5, or 4 and 6, I guess it would be. If you change his address there, if somebody drives up the road to look for the road to get in, there's not a road, there's not an access between 4 and 6 to drive up to 5, his new address. So his address really is, I mean, I don't know if he's thinking through that scenario either.
Where's his current mailbox? Does anybody know where?
Do you know? I've not been out.
Post office box.
Post office box, okay. I mean, we can talk to Mr. Mayor if you want, but again,
Signage is the way to go.
Yeah, that's
if he has a mailbox, I suggest he put the mailbox right at the driveway.
or some other, I mean, I've seen the signs, there's fairly large numerals that designate that it's down that driveway. It might be as simple as that, but again, this is the first time in decades that this has come up, so it's kind of like, be careful what you wish for in terms of changing that address.
And since there's an easement that he has to get back to his driveway, where you're putting the sign is going to be on someone else's property.
Why doesn't he just tell people to go a quarter of a mile further up and turn right?
I could have said better, Roger. This is the first time it's come up, and I'm thinking that we don't overreact to it.
Did he not own all that property at one point? Did he sell that, or I don't?
That predates me, but it's very possible.
Okay.
I think that with the board's understanding, we'll just go ahead and relay to him, perhaps the easiest thing would be the sign, if that's okay with the board.
Yeah, give him actually much choice, the sign, or we can change his number if he wants to.
Yeah, if he insists on changing the number, I'm not resisting that.
Right, but that's going to be on his sign.
Yeah,
sure.
Okay. We'll notify Mr. Mayo.
Thank you.
Okay, the next letter comes from Dwayne Wedling. He's the co-race director of the Ben Yorgi Foundation, and they're actually holding, believe it or not, their third annual Hey I Know You 5K on July 22nd, 2012. And as in the past, they would like permission from the township. They will be using the township roads, and we need to do this for our insurance carrier to notify them what's going on. Ben Gallagher has worked with them in the past, and they're a very good group to work with, I believe, Ben. Yeah, so we're recommending approval of this based on the same conditions, the hold harmless agreements and insurance that they need before they start the race.
Okay.
I think we should have a motion from the board, please.
Any commissioner comments or questions?
I ran in this 5K last year. It was my first 5K, and it was a great event. They put on a very organized, exciting event, so I would absolutely support doing this.
Did you finish?
I certainly did. I placed third in my age group, 22 minutes and 10 seconds.
Is that 16 to 21?
They're only 4 of his age group, though.
I'm very proud of myself. Don't bring me down here.
Don't separate your shoulder, pat yourself in the back.
I'd like to make a motion then that we approve Ben Yorking Foundation and the third annual Hey I Know UK on July 21st, 2012.
One second.
Public comment? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving the request for the Hey Know You 5K race, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Fossman, your request.
Okay, we will notify them. Thank you, and that's all the correspondence, Mr. President.
Next, we have a request for appointment for 3 new board members to the library board. We have before us the recommendation for William Cho, Erica Wade Elcock, thank you, and Teresa Schweier. This committee, with the help of the library board president, came before the General Administration Committee this evening for discussion, and is a recommendation of the General Administration Committee to approve these 3 board members. Mr. Fosselman, can we do these all at once, or do we have to do them one at a time?
I'll ask the solicitor as to, should we do individually the appointments?
You can do them all at once unless they get voted down. You have to do them individually because they're all going to be approved.
It's been a recommendation of the General Administration Committee to approve all 3, so I think we can do it expedited. And in that case, I'll accept a motion from the board to approve the board members before you. So moved. Do I hear a second? I'll second. Thank you. Comments from the public? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving the 3 board members before us, William Cho, Erica Elcock, and Teresa Schweier, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I think all 3 were here. I think
all 3 were here. Mr. Cho had apparently leave. Ms. Elcock, Ms. Schweier, would you care to make any comments before the board?
Thank you.
We thank you. We thank you for your volunteerism and your service before us. And you are joining a very illustrious group of the library board. And we thank the library board for their diligence in the search out for these board members. I understand that there were 7 members that they actually had interviewed, and they had specific skill sets they're looking to accomplish. And we're very excited to have you aboard. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is approval of the board minutes from the previous meeting. Any commissioner comments or corrections? Hearing none, I'll accept a motion to accept the board minutes as written.
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the board minutes in the previous meeting. Any public comment? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes from the previous board meeting signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Madam Secretary, your minutes are approved. Ms. Williams.
For this week, February 16, 2012, we are requesting payment from the general fund, $209,093, the sewer fund, $163,524, developers escrow fund, $32,742, and the capital projects fund, $9,223, for a total of $414,583.
Thank you. Any commissioner comments or questions? Commissioner Reese.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Cassandra, just on page 4, I noticed for interior workplace solutions for office furniture is a $1,500 charge. What was that for, please?
I'll let Ms. Pandel tell you about that.
Number of things in the permanent and community development office, a new desk for the zoning officer, some storage, and chairs. We had some chairs that were worn out that have been replaced, and some lighting.
So it was mostly replacement of just...
It was a new desk and work area for Carl Best, and then some replacement pieces too.
Thank you.
Sure.
It's probably because the previous zoning officer wore everything out.
A lot of hard work.
For hard work, right?
I think he took it with him to this side of the hall.
Maybe he took it home.
Took pieces of it, there's nothing left in the world.
Yes, I have a question. Again, on page 4, Bill, I gotta ask, your third invoice for Lower Mac and Wild Cherry improvement, the traffic signal, I believe, thought we were done with that, or if we're not, what still needs to be done?
Mr. Fornwell just spoke to Peter Lair yesterday on?
Yes.
Yesterday about getting that forward. It's on his desk to be finalized and sent to PennDOT. But as far as I know, we're done. But it sits on Peter's desk if you want to touch base with Rich, but that's where it sits.
So
it's an issue involving, you know, the right-of-way and opinion of title and so forth. That was a convoluted thing. But as far as our services, we're done. You won't see any more invoices from us, but it sits right now to go to PennDOT.
So once it goes to PennDOT, we don't expect them to kick it back for anything, or?
I don't think so. I'm not going to say definitely, but considering how many iterations there have been, I think it's safe to say we're pretty much there.
So this should be the last one. I see it on yours.
It should be the last one, yes. If it isn't, I'll give you a heads up before the invoice goes out.
Any additional commission comments? Hearing none, I'll call for a motion to approve the bill list as submitted by Ms. Williams.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Any public comment? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote for the approval of the bill list from Ms. Williams. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ms. Williams, your bill list is approved. And we pay our bills. Next item on the agenda. Mr. Erdman.
Yes, I want to give the board a very brief update on the SCARP. There's actually going to be a more comprehensive update at a future meeting on the 24th of February. There's going to be a meeting at Lehigh County Authority among the various municipal representatives to basically update everybody on what's been going on in the SCARP plan for the past year or more since the last meeting. But the one thing I wanted to bring up at this point is just give the board an update on the ongoing effort on what we'll call the illegal connections and specifically the sump pumps. As was discussed at a prior board meeting, there was a letter sent to, turned out to be approximately 100 property owners indicating that they had sump pumps connected to the sewer system. The good news is that 41 of them have disconnected. The not so good news is the other 59 have not responded. So we're moving to the next phase, which is to send another letter that's going to be a follow-up letter to say, you didn't respond to the first letter, we need to hear back from you to get this problem corrected, and I just wanted the board to be aware of that if you get any feedback from the property owners. It's going to be a little bit more stern of a letter, but it's going to be a follow-up letter basically saying you haven't responded. People are very busy these days. It's possible they got it put aside, forgot about it, so we're certainly going to make every effort to do this in what I'll call a cooperative way by getting their cooperation. The 41 that responded, they disconnected some pumps without any questions, so I'm certainly optimistic, or somewhat optimistic, that we'll be able to pursue the rest of them, but we didn't want to move into that phase without the board being aware of that in case you get any questions from property owners. And as I said, the more comprehensive update on the many other moving parts in this, I provided a future meeting probably sometime in, well, realistically, probably April, because I think there's some things coming up for March that are going to keep us kind of busy.
I think, with your indulgence, Mr. President, Bill, in the future, I think since the sewers fall under the Public Works Committee, that the Public Works Committee be kept up on this, and then information come up through the committee.
Okay, we can do that. That's a good point.
Just a question, Bill, and for the board, actually. We're going to get to a point of these 59, some are not going to be disconnected. And that will be then the board's decision as to what is the next step, I guess. Is what we're at one point, at some point, we're going to get to that point where the 3-4 letters have not done any good. So you, as a board, will have to determine what the next step is. Correct, Bill? Is that
yes, and that would definitely.
Is there a procedure in place? Is there a
no.
Well, that recommendation recommendation will come up through the committee.
That would come up
Right,
through
but
the
just to
committee.
let you know, we're getting to that point. I think we talked about this last year about some places where, I think Upper Macungie, they talk about before you sell your home. I think they, is that part of
They have
it?
an inspection prior to a sale of a home, or during the sale of a home.
Right.
EMAS has already a policy in place that Renee and I are familiar with. So just to let you know, at some point, we're going to get closer to making a decision as to how to handle these.
That's been very successful, by the way, with Upper Macungie. They've caught a lot of illegal connections through that system, and it's paid for by
The new
the resident.
Yeah.
Commissioner Lansing, as chair of the Public Works Committee, can we ask you to address this at your committee level and
Absolutely.
come back with the recommendation?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
And as the, I'm sorry, as the other half of the Public Works Committee, I'd like to get an opinion from our solicitor on it. He thinks we should proceed with that.
Questions, so the one letter went out, right? Not more than one yet at this point?
Just one.
Just
Just
one.
one.
Two and calls have been made.
Oh, okay.
Two now, okay.
That would be my suggestion, is maybe a phone call,
We've
and
done
maybe
that.
we can cross-reference that with our email list. Maybe we have their email address. You know, I guess you don't have to put your address in when you fill out the email form, but it may be a way to cross-reference. You know, get some of the email.
I think communication, as Mr. Urban had indicated, is very important, and but there has to be a point, as Mr. Paulson said, where this needs to be enforced. Anything else, Mr. Urban?
Just one other quick update. The board is aware, because of the email that Renee sent out, that the Spring Creek Road Bridge is going to start on the 27th, and Spring Creek Road is going to be closed in that area. I just wanted to let the board know from the standpoint of the schedule, based on the discussion at the pre-construction meeting, that the completion is anticipated to be toward the end of the year. Now, they've indicated before Christmas, but I'll be a little more generous and say by the end of the construction season or end of the calendar year. So between February 27th and basically the end of the year, that area is going to be closed. If you'll recall, and you saw the detail, the detour is on Spring Creek Road, Lower Macungie Road, Hamilton Boulevard, and Trexler Road. Checks are down road. So it's going to be an inconvenience, but it'll be a big improvement when it's done.
And I guess there was an article in this past week's morning call that PennDOT's been very busy out there with road construction, so we're actually very fortunate in our township.
Well, Ben just informed me they changed the date to March 1st, so that's hot off the press. So we've already lost a week.
The map that was shared with us through email showing the detour, we can put that online once we have a confirmed date to make the public aware. And it's probably worth also utilizing the email system at some point, because it's such a heavily traveled.
Yeah. And I should point out, we are working very, very closely with PennDOT. Unfortunately, the notification of this came out very late, and we attended a meeting which turned out to be a pre-construction meeting. We thought it was some sort of a design coordination meeting, so things have really been fast-tracked, but we're trying to get the appropriate signage in. We've made some comments on that, and I've got some assurances they'll add the additional signage. We work close with Public Works to make sure it's posted as much as it possibly can, especially given the long duration of it. So working closely, if there's any complaints or anything, we'll certainly follow up with PennDOT as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Anything else, sir? Ms. Panley?
Just two items to update the commissioners on. We had originally planned to have our joint workshop next week with the Planning Commission. And if you remember, last year was the first year we did that, and it was very helpful to staff and to the Planning Commission in terms of setting priorities for updating ordinances and planning studies that we need to undertake in the new year. The date has been rescheduled to March 22nd, which is a Thursday, and that will be in lieu of the normal Planning Commission workshop in March. Some of the things we're going to be talking about are these mixed-use districts, one that's proposed in the commercial zone. I'm also interested in looking at one in the residential zone for a neighborhood serving commercial mixed use. We also have conservation design, which is kind of an environmentally based cluster ordinance. You'll be seeing a proposal for changing that in our ordinance as well to allow, that is another type of use. So again, we would like to talk about that. There's been interest in examining the 500-year floodplain regulations. Some of the existing residents that are located within the 500-year floodplain are experiencing problems when they want to renovate or provide minor additions to their property, so that's something we need to work through with the Planning Commission. We had had a rezoning request, it's under old business on the agenda for commercial properties or agricultural properties to be rezoned to commercial that have frontage on Route 100. That's again something we'll be talking about, and then there's some other minor revisions that need to be made. It's an opportunity to have a dialogue about what's working well, what's not working well, where can we head in the future, and set priorities as a group. So that, I just want to make you aware that, confirm that that date has been changed to the 22nd, and if I think there is one commissioner who's not able to make that date, I'll be happy to pass along any recommendations or priorities that you have for that. The time is 7 o'clock. It will be in this room. And last time, if you remember, we just set up a big round square table, mix everybody in, and the round square table. And I think Irv will be conducting the meeting as the chairman of the Planning Commission.
Sarah, that's an advertised meeting.
Yeah, it's been advertised and put on our website as well, so we encourage the residents to be here. But
yeah,
it was a very good meeting last year of the board of members. I thought it was one of our better meetings.
It was about an hour and a half or 2 hours, and there's a lot to talk about. So I think, and there is again this year, so that's great. The other thing I wanted to report on is not really so much from planning, but from the community development end. We had an evaluation that's done every 5 years by the Insurance Services Office, which is a national company that evaluates building code practices. And I think they said that they evaluate nationwide about 7,000 municipalities. We're one of them. We were evaluated 5 years ago. George Caldarelli, who's our residential building inspector and fire marshal. Sharon Colson, who's she's our permits coordinator. And also we had our third-party inspector come sit in on the meetings with her. The majority of it has to do, the majority of their evaluation has to do with our procedures and how we administer these codes and what codes we're administering, if they're up to date, how current they are. And then secondarily, our plan review and field inspection procedures. We were able to improve our score this year. It's a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being least favorable or least compliant. We're at a 4, we were at 5 before. She said that's a very, very good score, especially for a municipality our size, or being compared with large municipal areas, large cities. And so we're very pleased. Hopefully that translates into some more favorable underwriting for our residents, because that is one of the factors that insurance providers look at in underwriting building loans or insurance. So we're very proud of that and keep working. There were some minor recommendations that we'll be implementing, but I think we're heading in the right direction, and we're very pleased. And I'm pretty proud of everybody. They put in a lot of work to get all the information to her. It was a lot. This is a summary book, but anyone is willing to look at it and see what we've been evaluating, and we have a pretty big file of information that we gave to her. So that's it for me.
Thank you. Mr. President? Yes, Mr. Bill.
Oh, sorry. Can I ask a question, please? Sarah, you brought up the 500-year floodplain thing. I have a friend that unfortunately he can't handle his affairs, and he called me the other day and he said he got a reassessment from 500-year to 100-year. He's been living in the property for 20 years. The mortgage company called him and said he had to buy insurance for $2,300 and some dollars, or they're going to call his mortgage if he doesn't buy the insurance. Can he appeal this?
Yeah, and I think Jim is much more conversant with this, but he
can. He can, but what he would normally have to do is hire a civil engineer or the like, and they would do a hydraulic study.
Okay.
And that hydraulic study then would have to be submitted to the feds. And if the feds accept it, then they could make an exclusion or
right.
They've done it on 1 or 2 properties I know over in the hills at Lockridge. But I mean, there's obviously an expense to that. Now, probably what's happened is the floodplain maps themselves from the feds changed in 2004. He probably was in the 500-year, and when the maps changed, obviously the water elevations rose, thereby expanding the floodplain, and he probably got caught now, probably in the
He's
100 year.
He's caught Jim about 10% of his property, 20% of his property.
Now, if someone hasn't looked at it closely, though, what I've noticed over the years is just simply by looking at the map is not a good gauge. What he may have to do is hire a surveyor and take, what happens is the surveyor will take a first floor elevation shot on the home. They'll compare that to the 100-year water elevation in the federal study. And if that elevation is higher than the FEMA elevation, then that's pretty much proof that he's out of the 100-year.
But he could make an improvement of bringing in brown or something and fix
Well,
that
not for the structure itself, because the structure is already in existence. That elevation is the elevation, so he can't literally build a moat around it, because then the water won't be able to get out of that area to the creek.
Well, it would be before the creek would get to its location.
I mean, they'd have to look at that, but again, the ordinance does not allow any grading in the 100-year floodplain in our township. So.
Well, he would get permission if that was a solution.
He'd need more than permission.
He's not gonna get it.
Well, no, I'm not saying that. He would have to jump through a bunch of hoops.
Okay.
It's not up to us to say that. That's
I'll
up to
tell
us.
him what you said. Thank you very much.
We'll be happy to talk to him if he wants to come in.
Okay, thank you.
The other suggestion I could make is he may want to shop that around. We had a situation this week in the office where they shopped it around with several different providers of the flood insurance, and the rates do vary. As much as the 2,300 was the number we heard, there was 2 other companies that provided it for about half of that. So you might want to shop that around too.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Reese?
Yes, I just want to mention on this letter, in the second paragraph toward the bottom, they talk about the ISO program will apply credits to new construction within Upper Macungie Township. I assume that's a typo.
That's a typo.
We want to make sure that we get the credits.
We certainly
Not our
do.
friendly neighbors to the north.
I don't know that they got a 4 on their score either. Yeah, you're right, that is a typo.
Mr. Solicitor?
Just one brief update for you. As you know, I reported last time that the township had been named in a lawsuit involving the Oman at Brookside, is that what it is, by Brubaker. And I just want to confirm with you that since then, the First American Title Insurance Company has stepped up. They are covering whatever potential loss or may have to contribute. Plus, they are covering all of the legal defense fees and have appointed expert counsel that I'm familiar with and I've worked with in the past. They presented their preliminary objections to it and their brief, and I think it's well-founded, and there's a good chance that the court might dismiss us out of that rather quickly. But in any case, there's no cost at this moment in time that the township has to be concerned about.
Thank you, Mr. Surratt. Mr. Fossil.
Mr. President, the first page of my report is the grants that we are working on. The second page talks about some other grants. Sarah has found another grant we're going to apply for, which is the Bikes Belong grant, we'll try to work on that as regards to Camp Olympic. I'm proud to announce that Hills of Lock Ridge Community Center parking lot lights are now up and functioning, so the residents have already called and thanked us for that. And as the board knows, last year we had a meeting out there with some of the residents, and it was kind of dark, so we're pleased that, and I have to thank Lee Lichtenwater, he helped organize and get that thing moving. The goals and objectives, we still have Cassandras. We're going to work on the finance director's report. We forgot to do that last time, but each of the other department heads have given their goals and objectives. Document shredding is right around the corner, March 17th, and the EAC has really picked up and is going to help with a lot of volunteers for that process. And again, that's a 2-day event. We're going to be doing the shredding as well as electronic recycling. 38 of our township employees recently participated in our CPR AED recertification training. I'm very excited that we had that good of participation. I want to thank Ben as well as the Macungie ambulance team that helped get that set up, and it's something very important that we want to make sure we have as many people certified as possible. On Tuesday, I was at the Lehigh County Council of Government meeting, at which time we talked to Tom Mueller, who is the, what is his title?
Administration.
Don Cunningham asked him to come and talk about the reassessment, which is going to happen this year. And next Thursday, each of you will be mailed to each property owner the new rates, or the new, excuse me, your new assessment valuation. Now remember, this is going to be at 100%. Currently, it's at 50% of your house, I guess, your valuation is now going to be at 100%. There are over 110,000 residential properties in Lehigh County. We have 6,800 commercial and 8,800 vacant. The good news, and Tom Mueller actually pointed out, Lower Macungie, 68% of the residents, property owners in the township will see their taxes go down in 2013 because of the new development we've had. So that's nice to know. We're pleased with that. I just using, I see here, they gave a list of every community. For instance, Albertus, it's just the opposite. 68% of their residents are going to see a tax increase, not because of any other reason, it's just the valuation of their properties increased. It's based on, I think, some of the homes that were built prior to 1991, I guess, is the last time we had reassessment. And Rich is very familiar with this. He's worked with the county on this. So, again, I remember 1991 when that happened. And so it was. This is something that, so on Thursday, it'll be mailed out. Then there'll be the evaluation process, or the, I guess, appeal process. And then by November 2012, we'll all get our final assessment number. So this will occur for the January 1st, 2013 year.
Bruce, let me just
correct
you a little bit on that. The first notice that's going to go out, and again, since the residents of Lower Macungie do not have a local tax, it's going to affect their county and their school tax. The first letter that's going to come out is going to be an informal notice to tell you what the projected number or your projected valuation is, and it encourages you homeowners to check the correctness of what is on the assessment records, which is available online by going to www.lehighcounty.org and clicking on the assessment. What they're suggesting is that if you get this number and you think, wow, why did mine go up, or why didn't it go down more, and you go on the county assessment website and it says you have 4 bedrooms and 4 baths and a finished basement, and you only have 3 bedrooms and 2 baths, and you don't even have a basement, then you will go in and have an informal review with the staff so you can tell them why it's inaccurate. After that period of time for people to correct what are perceived to be inaccuracies on it, then the final notices will come out, and people will have 40 days from the time they get that, from the time that notice is mailed, not from the time they receive it, but from the time that, the day that notice is mailed starts the clock. And it's 40 days to appeal to the Board of Assessment Appeals, okay? And then you get to go before the Board of Assessment Appeals, and if they do not give you the relief you want, their notices go out by the end of October, and then you have 30 days from the time those notices go out to take an appeal to court. So if you don't appeal the informal one, it doesn't mean you're not going to have a chance to appeal the final, but you're going to have 40 days from the date of that notice to appeal. And there will not be an annual, every year there's an annual assessment appeal date of August 1. That will not be operative this year. It's 40 days from the date that the notice is mailed, and the notices are being staggered. They're not all going out. And I presume that like an entire municipality might go out at one time. But if your neighbor gets one, dated one date, you get one dated another date, that's just the way they were mailing them out, but it's 40 days from the date of mailing.
So it was very informative to us, each of the communities that attended. So again, we'll be waiting for the mail to see what our assessment looks like. Today I went to the Lehigh and Northampton County Earned Income Tax meeting to discuss the Allentown Arena and what the impact of the neighborhood and investment zone is going to have to our residents. Again, this is a new law that was approved in 2009, where anyone who works between 9th and 7th Street in Allentown, whose money used to come to the township and the school district as our local earned income tax, will be going to the city to help pay off the bonds, debt on this. I was supposed to meet with Senator Brown this afternoon. That meeting was canceled. We're meeting next Friday, so I'll get more information at that point. There were some preliminary numbers kicked around by the city of Allentown as to what it's going to mean for what kind of numbers we're looking at. Preliminary, they thought about $500,000 for the entire Northampton and Lehigh County municipalities and school districts. We're trying to get our own, what it's going to mean for each community is what we're trying to get them to give to us. So there's a lot of frustrated people because, again, we don't know all the answers yet, and hopefully when we meet with Senator Brown, he can fill us in with some of the questions that we all have. We as a group have already outlined about 8 different questions we're going to get to the Senator, so he's ready to prepare to ask or answer the questions we have for him. So I'll keep you posted. We're obviously concerned because there will be a tax decrease in terms of our earned income tax, which is our biggest revenue generator. So it has an impact on us. We just don't know what at this point. So as soon as I find out, I will let you know. That's it.
Bruce, we just follow up. You said 7th and 9th Street, and I think that confirms what I had suggested to you, that it's the east side of 9th Street. It does not include the PPL Tower.
It does not. That's correct.
Okay.
And again, there's a map that you could go on and take a look at. So, and I think there's down near the waterfront. There's another area that they also put in there. So it's kind of very complicated, but we'll get the answers that we all need.
Considering they knocked down everything between 7th and 9th.
I know.
There's so many workers.
I don't know how many people work in a morning call anymore for the township.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I'd like to suggest that this board consider going on the record as being opposed to that law, and that we oppose the fact that our taxpayers, basically without our consent or representation, are being compelled to pay for something in the city of Allentown. I just don't see where they have the right to reach into our pocket and take money. Apparently nobody knew this. From what I'm reading in the paper, it was quite a surprise to everybody that they voted for Allentown to take our money for their development. I think if we wanted to take something from Allentown to build, add on to our community center, I think they'd have something to say about it. So I'd just like to maybe have a sense of this board that we oppose that law, and that we don't believe that any of these communities should be compelled to pay for something in the city of Allentown.
Certainly hear what you're saying. I guess we're in a catch-22. This is a bill that was passed in the state back in 2008, 2009. And in a sense, I certainly agree with you, Commissioner Reese. I think my biggest frustration is that no one consulted with us in this matter. But it's a bill that's been passed. I'm not quite sure what, if anything, any of this can do.
Well, I would
other than express our displeasure.
Well, I'd like to do that. I'd like to make a motion that this board instruct Mr. Fosselman that when he goes to that meeting on February 24th, that he tells Senator Brown that this board is opposed to that bill, or that law.
I hear a motion. Do I hear a second to Mr. Reese's motion?
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second for this board to instruct Mr. Fosselman to express our displeasure with the NIS Act that's been approved. Is there any public comment on that matter?
I would just second that motion if I could.
Okay. Any additional commissioner comment?
I mean, my only comment is, I agree that the concept itself, I don't support the concept. But I think the idea of expressing our dissatisfaction is sort of an exercise of futility. It's already happened, and we all don't know the full ramifications. And I think if we're going to do something like this, I think the more appropriate time to do it would be after Bruce has his meeting with Senator Brown. We can get a better understanding of the history and the background and actually know if there was any communication that existed that maybe we're just not aware of. Because obviously we're only reading what we see in the paper, and we all know that the paper has one perspective. So without conferring with the source, I just don't see the merit in approving such a motion at this point. I think maybe after the meeting with Senator Brown, there may be some merit to it.
Just in response to that, I'd just like to say that that's after the fact. I think whatever the reasoning was and how much information was done, the bill was passed. I don't think it's a fair bill. And I think the time to tell Senator Brown of our displeasure with it is when they're meeting to discuss this, not after that meeting. whatever comes out of that. I think if we want this bill to be reconsidered, I think it would be beneficial for the municipalities to go into that meeting with the support of their elected officials, that they also would like this bill to be either amended or changed.
Commissioner Brown, any comment?
No, I think I might agree with Roger. I think maybe the time is now. Maybe it'll start a movement, but I'm not very happy with it. I'd like to, send my sentiment to Mr. Brown.
I agree that we give Bruce the full support of the elected officials to communicate our dissatisfaction, and I think we're not alone. Across both counties, municipal officials are not happy with the fact that our tax dollars are being drained from us without any consultation for us. Any additional comments? Public comments? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second to provide Bruce with the support of the Board of Commissioners to express our dissatisfaction with the way in which the matter's been handled. Now I see a comment from Mr. Snyder.
Can we also just get a clarification on what exactly the motion is, what we're expressing?
Larry Schneider, 5332 Lamb Terrace. Do a poll on the homepage. Thank you.
Mr. Reese, would you care to restate your motion?
Yes, I would just say that we should tell Senator Brown that this board resents the fact that this law is passed, and we don't support it, and we don't think it's a fair law. And I would be, just to add on to it, whether we consult it or not, even if we were consulted, I still don't like it. I just don't think Allentown has any right to demand that we pay for something that's their idea.
Mr. President?
Yes.
If I could suggest maybe along those lines, I think what you're saying is, in terms of emotion and on the issue is, I think the general sense of the board is that we disagree with the concept of using the earned income tax dollars of our residents who are employed in Allentown and redirecting them into Allentown. Is that essentially what we're saying, Mr. Reese?
I'm saying that I don't like that they did that, and I think they should revisit it.
Mr. Luttrell?
Mr. President, I like the idea that the resolution is being acted on. We elect you 5 people up here to represent the people, and I think that's fine with me. To take a poll at this point, I think you should make your point now.
Thank you. Commissioner Connor, are you clear on the motion before us? Ready for a vote?
What's the motion?
I believe the motion is that we're actually providing direction to Mr. Fosselman in his meeting with Senator Brown to express that the elected officials of Lower Macungie Township are expressing their dissatisfaction with the fact that our earned income tax dollars are being taken from us for a project that is benefiting a single municipality. Is that correct, Mr. Commissioner?
Well, I would also say dissatisfaction and opposed. I would throw an opposed in there.
Okay.
And I would leave out the part of the consent, whether it's...
I get the drift, by the way.
Okay.
Good.
You get the direction,
Well,
Bruce?
for Renee's purposes, she needs to know what she's typing in.
Yeah.
She has it all down. I've been watching her write this down.
She usually gets that better than we do.
Yeah.
Everybody
All right, so we have a motion, a second. We've had public comment, commissioner comment. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We have 5 ayes.
Thank you.
Mr. Fosselman, throw in unanimously.
I will. Thank you.
And opposed, not disappointed. Vigorously.
Mr. President,
Yes.
may I ask, Renee, when does the poll question come up? When is the renewal of the question?
Very beginning of March.
Beginning of March. partner. So maybe not, we're always wrestling with a good
Yeah,
question. to put up
that
there.
might be a good question. This thing's not gonna go away, so we'll take Mr. Stoner's suggestion and we put that as a poll question. Alrighty, moving on to committee reports. Public Safety, Commissioner Reese.
Yes, thank you. As soon as I find my public safety notes, I'll be happy to continue.
Okay, we'll wait.
All right, the Public Safety Committee will meet again on March the 1st at 6:15 p.m. The Public Safety Commission will meet next Tuesday, February the 21st at 7 p.m. Those are both open to the public. The big issue on the Public Safety Commission and Committee is the Survey on Police Services. And last Wednesday, on February the 8th, Commissioner Brown, myself, and Scott Forbes, who's the chairman of the Public Safety Commission, met with a professor from Kutztown University at the professor's home and asked the professor if she would be interested in working with the township in developing a survey committee, a survey of some type. As far as we explained, we spent about an hour there. We explained what we were moving forward with the township, with the police department, whether or not we should get a different type of police services. If so, what type of services should we get? And if she would be willing to help, which she said she would be. We asked about a fee. She said that they do some pro bono work. It would depend on the amount of time that has to be expended and what it would entail. But she'd be interested in working with us in developing some type of a survey. So we left it with that we would get back to her. We also are trying to set up a meeting with another professor who works at Muhlenberg, who Scott Forbes has spoken to. Again, he's the chairman of the Public Safety Commission. He has spoken to her, and she has said she'd be willing to get involved, but wanted some more information. I've called her, and she has not returned my calls as of yet, so I will continue to try to contact her and set up a meeting between Commissioners Brown, myself, and Mr. Forbes, and we'll report back to the board. And of course, we will not commit to anything other than some preliminary talks until we have further direction from the board.
Commissioner Reese, the professors from Kutztown and Muhlenberg, do they teach classes that are related to this, or could their students be utilized in student projects that might reduce the cost of this to the township?
The professor we talked to from Kutztown is a research professor. That's what her field is. She does research and polling and surveys. The other professor was recommended by Chris Borick. We haven't been able to contact her, the professor from Kutztown. We did mention perhaps getting a graduate student to help us with the survey as a project, and she said they do not offer graduate courses in that type of surveys.
And
But she would be willing to do it.
Your Public Safety Commission meeting is what date, please?
The Public Safety Commission meeting, the next one is next Tuesday, February the 21st at 7 p.m.
Thank you. Commissioner Brown, follow up? Nothing to add. Thank you. Planning and zoning. I'm sorry, budget and finance.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry. Yes, Mr. Snyder.
May I comment on?
Of course.
Larry Schneider, 5332 Lamb Terrace. On behalf of a joint task force of Citizens for Change, Friends for the Protection of Lower Macungie Township, and also Citizens for a Strong Community, we'd like to express our concern with regards to advancing this particular project into a survey stage when the data that we have access to right now does not really reflect a need to move further into a survey. The data with regards to 34 burglaries, where you're looking at 30,500 residents or 10,500 households, knowing full well we also had done polls back in 2009 and 10, which you all have copies of. Our concern is that this $25,000 that has been sitting there for a survey really is questionable relative to whether it should be moved into a survey stage. knowing full well that the data just does not reflect the need to analyze a further increase or adjustment of the police protection principle in Lower Macungie Township. The state police are doing an excellent job. Our crime is very low. And to just spend $25,000, the sense of spending $25,000 is of great concern to us.
Thank you.
May I respond?
Sure.
I'm very surprised, Mr. Snyder, because, Mr. Snyder,
Larry?
You want to interact?
well, I just want to respond. I'm just very surprised because I was under the impression that last year you were very supportive of this. You talked about surveys, you talked about public meetings, you talked about getting everybody involved in doing a survey.
Our position is very clear.
I'm surprised that
it says
it seems it's an about face. I'm sorry. It seems like it's an about face from the stance you had last year.
No. I think if you would look at our website, it specifically identifies a progressive series of steps. The study first.
Larry, if you could, your mic, just gotta push the button. Green, the battery probably died. Okay.
Anywho, I'll bring a battery next time. We very clearly indicated you need to look at the data. And back in the October meeting, there was an inference in the committee report that you gave and encouraged by Scott Forbes and his quite intelligent group of board members that the data be incorporated into any survey. But every time the survey is discussed, you seem to be subordinating the data. What we shouldn't do here is to go into a survey without informing the citizens what kind of data exists. 34 burglaries for 30,500 residents is extraordinary. Now, you're not motivated by HR 1228 anymore because it's sitting in the Judiciary Committee in Harrisburg, and it's not going to move at all. You know that now more than anyone else does. So what is motivating you? What is your agenda to move this into a survey stage or a possible solution stage? Our crime is minimal, to say the least. The police protection we're getting is excellent. So why are you what's motivating you to move into the survey stage? At $25,000? We're a little bit concerned about your agenda. It's not working, but I'm sure you heard me.
I did, and I'm stunned. I'm absolutely stunned by your explanation. What I think is a total reversal of position you've advocated for over a year.
Well, I don't know if you were talking to, it wasn't me though.
I'm sorry, you were here.
Okay.
I saw you, I heard you.
Well then, when
I saw you at the public, when we had that joint
workshop,
public safety
committee. Commissioners were present.
Yeah, the workshop.
Mr. Conrad, Commissioner Eichenberg indicated that any kind of survey that's going forward must first start with the study, the data. And the data does not support a survey right now.
In your opinion?
Can you challenge that further?
No, I'm just saying, you're speaking your opinion.
The data is, no, it's not my opinion, the data is black and white, it's there.
Well, thank you, I appreciate your comment.
Commissioner Conrad?
I mean, I can speak to that too. I mean, you know, I agree with you. I mean, and we did talk about this at the joint meeting that we had with the Board of Commissioners and the Public Safety Commission. There was no consensus coming out of there necessarily of what was going to be done, but I think it was pretty clear that there were some commissioners that felt, you know, absent data, there ought not to be a survey yet because we have nothing necessarily to present to the members of the public. My sort of impression of how this is working out right now with this survey stuff is determining how going forward, maybe after the data is gathered, that we can provide perhaps a free survey if we get to that point. But it's my understanding that we're not moving forward with a survey until we gather data.
Well, the concern that I have regarding the survey is I'm very impressed by the Public Safety Commission. There's some really intelligent people up there. But during that meeting, nobody says anything except one individual, and then the visiting committee members. Why are you going outside to contact Michelle Deegan, for instance, to assist you in developing a survey, when she knows nothing about the township, nothing about police protection, and she's going to cost you at least $25,000 at least, when you have a dynamite group of people on that board who are dying to get involved and participate. But it seems like there's pushback there.
I will tell you why, Mr. Snyder, because that dynamite board spent a year developing a survey question, a question of 3 questions that they put together, that they developed, that this board did not accept. And you know,
And why didn't you accept it? Because I understand the previous board.
I accepted it. It was the board, other board members, there was not a vote to go forward.
So why did the previous board, like Julie Timke and John Tunney, they just threw their hands up and said, I'm out of here, it ain't working, I can't get it to you, and left.
What happened to 3 minutes?
And if I may interrupt just a second, I also remember, Mr. Snyder, that you also rejected that survey program that the public, that committee put together. You also were objecting to it at that
The
meeting.
survey concept or the question?
No, the questionnaire that
It was
public
the three
safety
questions that we suggested as a very first
were at
step.
that as well.
Those questions came from the left side of the dais, was brought over here to the first row, nobody showed us anything, and quite frankly, when we're looking at the data angle, to get that addressed primarily, to find out whether there is enough crime in this township really to warrant a survey, to find out whether we need to go to a solution phase or not. Those are the questions we need to ask, but I never saw those questions.
And I also remember that, I agree with Commissioner Reese, that you were also a supportive of the survey back then.
No, I was not. Take a look at our website, that's been up there for the past 5, 6, 7 months.
Now, there are two commissioners here who remember very clearly that you were a proponent of the survey.
We did a poll in 2009 and 2010. And those questions were, check what is most concern to you. Smart growth, park and recreation, public safety, police, fire, traffic, roads, and congestion. There were 4 choices. Public safety, police protection got 13% of the vote. There were 451 respondents. So basically only 13% of the people. And I know you may be questioning the duplicity of the voting process, but I think I confirmed that with you all that that is, on a general communication basis, not possible. They would have to be very aggressive and go to another laptop, or whatever the case may be, to create some kind of duplicity. But it was a fairly reasonable response. And then we had a poll in 2010 where the question was, police protection, please select one. I don't think we have a problem. Number 1. Number 2, need to learn more. Crime cost coverage. 3, need a better police protection now. Only 27% of the people actually said need a better police protection now. So basically 2 polls we ran within a 5-month period showed really no interest.
Okay. Well, Commissioner Reese's report was that this is being studied and being researched. There's no motion before the board to approve a survey. There's data being collected for a consideration review. So I think further discussion is...
Focus on the study. Focus on the study. The data.
Well, what we're doing is we are collecting data, and so I think that there's... unless there's another commission's want to further discussion, I think that we've pretty kind of beaten this horse to death at this point.
I would just like to say that I drove my own car, my own gas, and I spent not a dime of taxpayers' money. So we haven't touched that $25,000, and it does not cost anything to get information.
So that's where we're at. So there's nothing here to appreciate your opinion and your ideas. It's taken into consideration. I appreciate your concern, and your concern is noted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I have a minute? He had 10.
Go for it, Joe. Joe Ludrow, former member of the Public Safety Commission. Unfortunately, my term expired, but I'm still active. First of all, I didn't hear that we were spending $25,000 here. That's the first thing. Second of all, the last meeting that Mr. Snyder attended, quite frankly, he's admiring the members of the commission. That's not was his attitude there. I was very upset with what he was trying to tell the commission what to do. Now, they're elected to do a job. Unfortunately, this police thing has dragged out. When I was on the board, the hunting issue dragged 6 or 7 months. We didn't get into the police issue. Now we're finally getting into the police issue. I did some things. I made some recommendations to the board. We got things from Berks County, some very good information and so forth. Now the board is moving forward. They're moving forward at no cost at this point. Nobody said they were going to spend $25,000. So I'm really glad that Mr. Snyder has changed his tone, that he thinks the board is very intelligent about it. Now let's move forward.
Moving on, budget and finance, Commissioner Conrad.
Not very often we get exciting discussion like that, so threw me off a little bit here. Budget and Finance Committee meeting, we have not met since our last meeting, but we do have a meeting on March 1st, at the point in which we are going to be interviewing, I guess interview is the appropriate term, the hiring potentially of an outside firm to collect delinquent sewer or refuse payments, which we've talked about before, where there's several $100,000 worth of delinquent payments that we need to recoup. We've discussed at the Budget and Finance Committee that probably the most appropriate approach means to do that is to hire an outside agency to do it, and not put that burden on our township staff. So there will be 2 firms that are coming in. Do you recall the names?
I do. One is Portnoy, and the second one is Sandra, the firm from Reading. A-B something. Yes.
You'll know when they show up.
Yeah. And just a reminder, the meeting will start at 6 p.m., Mr. Conrad.
Yes. So if you're interested in sitting in on that, 6 o'clock, meetings are always advertised. Please join us, and I'll do my best to be on time to that meeting, Mr. Township Manager. March 1st, Thursday, March 1st at 6 p.m. It actually says on the agenda 6:15, so we can just make sure that that's noted on the website. And that concludes my report unless
If there's any submissions by the 2 firms, any proposals or whatever, could you see that
We'll make
Commissioner
sure.
Conrad and I get a copy of that
Sure.
prior to the
Yep, we'll get it to you. I think you already have it, so I'll make sure we'll get it tomorrow to you.
Question?
Sure.
How are those firms going to be reimbursed? Is they going to get a percentage of what they collect?
That's what we're going to discuss with them, Roger. That's,
all right.
They both have different ways of collecting the money. And
Yeah, but basically, Commissioner Reese, these companies work on a, basically they recover from the delinquent party their costs also. The variance on it is some of them have asked for an initial nominal amount, like $35, to just cover the initial starting the process, and I think the one firm believes that they have to do that under law, but even after that, when they recover the money, they recover that plus that $35. So there may be an initial outlay, but then they recover it all. And I think the other firm works a little differently, where they take a percentage, though, I think, of what they collect. So I think you're going to see that there's, I think from what I read, you're going to see a distinct difference between the 2, in that nothing costs the township out of pocket, but I think you may end up generating more from one versus the other from what I read in the program, because the one is totally factored in to recover all of the costs, including what their fees are from the delinquent. Now, what you're going to run into, and I'm just going to tell you this, is you're going to eventually have citizens coming forward that are involved in this process and complaining about, it started with a $300 delinquency and now it's $1,300 because of the fees and costs that are involved. That's a necessary part of that. And I guess your answer is going to have to be something like, then don't be delinquent. It's not like this is the first thing. The way I understand it is that the township staff has in any of these cases, has made repeated attempts on their own before it gets to this process. So I caution you that you're going to have comments from people that find their way into this, and there'll be all kinds of a million excuses why somehow it didn't get paid, and it's not reasonable, these expenses, but understand that staff has done letters and everything else on a repeated basis before it gets to that point. So
we just have to make sure that our ordinance allows for that collection.
Yes.
I'd like to add then that I think looking at an outside firm is a very good way to address this, considering that we're dealing with several hundreds of thousands of dollars that the township has been lacking for a long period of time, and with our staff the way it is, it certainly would be a burden on them. So I think getting an outside firm that can address these all at one time, and especially having the delinquent people pay for it, I think would be an excellent approach.
Commissioner Lansing, the state law provides already for the collection of taxes and municipal claims, that where we have to look at, and where your committee or group might want to look at this, is those and things that are enforced under, like the property maintenance or something else, something that's not like a street light tax. So that's something we'll look into too for you, but that's where the difference will be.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to make sure that whatever the proposals are being submitted, whatever they're asking for, is legally we can do that.
Yes, and I'm suggesting there already is, because the one company, at least Port Ethel, I'm more familiar with, does it already now for just about every school district in this county, plus several, the city of Allentown, et cetera. So, and it's been doing it for years, so it is a recognized method of collection. It's generally for taxes and municipal claims. We have some unusual things like the water, et cetera, that we're asking them to look into. So that's where we have to kind of fine tune that a little.
Yeah, I mean, you have to understand that some of these bills that are in the thousands of dollars have been gone on for years with no interest at all. So some of these people have been getting a free ride for quite a long time. So any penalties involved, I don't see a problem with that.
That concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Lonzig, any follow-up?
No.
Okay. Commissioner Brown, Planning and Zoning?
Thank you. The Planning Committee met on Tuesday, February 14th at 4 o'clock with an extended meeting at about an hour and a half. There were 4 plans or sketches in front of us which were discussed. First is the Stone Hill Meadow. They have, this is the property that is across the railroad tracks from the previous presentation tonight from Allen, Oregon. They have a subdivision. They're looking to put in what they call it like a cottage type development, which is small lots, cottage type houses in some sort of performance standard subdivision, which would allow for smaller lots but much larger open space. This was just a sketch plan, and it was an update for us, and it was the recommendation of the committee that the developer work with the Planning Commission in regards to the development of what zoning ordinance amendment they would like to move forward with. The second presentation was the Remington Property Group, which was in front of us tonight at the Allen, Oregon site, discussing what was discussed tonight. I won't go into that any further. The third presentation, well, it wasn't a presentation, was a sketch plan from Trainer Enterprises. This property is at 5248 Hamilton Boulevard, which is the American Kitchen building out there next to the health spa. So they had proposed to put in, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah, I kind of came away with it, it's like sort of like a very small strip mall or strip shopping center. They had proposed 2 small retail uses plus they described it as like a pizza shop for 3 uses on this site. It needs some zoning relief. It was a little unusual. It's a sketch plan, but I think they were heading off to the zoning hearing board. I don't know the date. I think it's the next zoning hearing board. But this was discussed at the Planning Commission meeting, which was held on the same date later in the evening. The last plan discussed was the Faith Evangelical Church, which was just an update, which provided us with an update of what was going on, which was also discussed then at the Planning Commission meeting. Rather interesting discussion at the Planning Commission. But I think that project is moving forward and requires no formal recommendation from the committee, so none was provided. We also took a look quickly, because we were running out of time, at the 2 ordinances that were in front of us at the last meeting, the timber harvest ordinance and the wood-fired boiler ordinance. I know the ordinances weren't included in my package tonight. I think we want to move forward with the, we tabled the timber harvest. There were some typos in there that I wanted to get corrected. The wood-fired boiler ordinance, it was the recommendation of the committee that we move that ordinance forward for advertising, and I guess for review by the county planning. I don't know
I don't know what we want to do here. I think we want to make a recommendation moving forward. I think I want to make a motion. I don't know that you need to see the ordinance again, or if you do, I think there is some pressing issue that we want to move that ordinance forward. If Sarah, you can elaborate.
I think Commissioner Brown would like to at least bring it before the board to have a chance to be able to read it.
It was in front of us last meeting. It was in our booklet.
But it's not.
Should be available to the public.
It's
Should be available.
Yeah, be available to the public before we recommend advertising.
Mr. President, what we could do is we'll get the ordinance ready for the next meeting. The board can review it. If you're ready to, then we can have the solicitor get ready for make it into for advertisement. That's okay.
I think because of the timing of the last committee meeting, we didn't have enough time after that to get it into your board packet, so it'll be there.
So we'll get it ready for you to see if you're ready to advertise.
And I just wanted to note, if I might, that South Whitehall is looking, it was in the paper today, looking at banning them altogether. So I'll have those articles ready.
All right, thank you. The last item, which we really didn't get a chance to review or discuss, was the planning director's goals for this year. I did talk briefly to Sarah today, but I'd like to meet with you, Bruce, to go over what the goals were presented and some ideas as well. So I'll talk to you later this week or next week, so we'll go over that and discuss it again maybe at the March
Later
meeting.
this week would be tomorrow.
Yes, it will.
You might want to wait until the joint planning commission and board of supervisors meeting is, because the goals might change.
Okay. Our next meeting is March 8th at 4 p.m. I believe there's a couple subdivisions on the tentative agenda. I think the Jandal plan is moving forward. And
Is it possible that the Spring Creek subdivision may be on that agenda? We haven't received a submission. We know it's coming. We think we've heard it's coming. And also the Act 537 plan update.
promises to be a long meeting, so
They usually are.
that's all I have to report.
I have nothing additional.
I have a question.
Sure.
Sarah, the zoning issues involving the American kitchen, was that resolved, or I understand by Mr. Brown's report that they're going to a zoning hearing board?
They're going to the zoning hearing board, yeah, they have various requirements because they are on restaurant use less than 2 acres site, which is a requirement in the ordinance. They have some buffer yard requirements and a minor yard. They're encroaching a small amount into the required front yard. The planning commission did recommend that those variances be granted, and that's going to the zoning hearing board at the end of the month.
The various uses, that was solved, though?
That was solved.
Cleared up.
Yep,
Okay, that was my question.
Yep, thanks for your help with that.
Public Works, Commissioner Lancic.
We did not meet since our last meeting. However, Commissioner Reese and I will be meeting on the 27th of this month at 4 p.m. here at the here in the ballroom.
Mr. Lansing, did you want, at the last board meeting, it was requested to have Mr. Erdman review the left-hand turn signal, and we have that information for you.
I didn't know if that was coming up tonight.
I don't know if the board wants to discuss it. We put it on there just in case. Bill came back with a quote of $2,000, and then he went into the details, itemized details of what it would cost. So I'm not sure. I think that's where we left it. The board asked me to have Bill review and get back to you with the numbers.
And what's the pleasure of the board?
I just want to say a few things. I have the quote, the $2,000 is correct. I'd like to know where we go from here. That is, if we authorize the study, it'll come back and there will be some, according to this presentation to PennDOT, as to whether or not they would accept a left turn arrow without the separate left turn lane there, which was the whole point of this. I think is that I'm hoping somebody looked at this and saw that, geez, it appears like there's more than a reasonable chance that that would get approved by PennDOT. Otherwise, I would question why we're moving forward with the study. So I'm thinking that, okay, the study is probably going to be approved by PennDOT, or at least I'm hoping somebody looked at it and that would be the case. Is that if it's approved by PennDOT, the next step would be probably the preparation of plans,
whatever's necessary to get the permit to install that. I'm kind of asking what's going to be the cost here on out should it be approved? That is, what's it going to run us in the way of to install the left turn, to prepare the plans, to get everything that's necessary to depend on approval. And I think I heard you last time when we don't have this, we didn't budget for this project. So you know, we get the cost, we don't have a budget for it. Where's the money going to come from? And that's just my question is going forward. Is I'd like to know how this process is going to work. So,
well, this is a step-by-step process. What you're asking for is you're asking for an answer before the data is given to PennDOT. That's not how PennDOT works. You prepare data, give it to PennDOT, and they will tell you whether it's allowed or not. Then, at that point, then if you want to move forward at that point, then you'll do your cost estimates as far as making the actual improvement. And that's just the way it works. As far as budgeting, we have money, I believe we have money in the 209 fund, don't we?
We do, and Bill, I think, sent an email to everyone regarding that and about the 209 monies. And
my suggestion is check with Rich on that one,
yeah,
because I'm not sure where that's going to take you.
And I don't think Rich had a chance because he was in Fort.
Yeah, you haven't seen anything on that.
No, right. So I think we need him to take a look at it prior to us moving on this. But I just wanted to remind you, this is where you had asked us that we presented the information back to you. It is not in the budget, but you know, it's an engineering type of an issue, so this will be covered under our engineering costs.
Exactly.
I mean, we have
every
other sites.
expense that this board creates, other than what's exactly in the budget, then we're going to question everything.
Right. I mean, this is something that from time to time in years past, we asked Bill to do work on certain issues, and this is one of them that, I think Mr. Brown's point was how much it was going to cost, so we can.
This study will determine whether a left turn signal is
warranted, I guess.
This study will determine whether or not PennDOT will permit the township to put in the left turn arrow without the lane. But getting back to Doug's earlier comment, as I indicated in the writing and also at the last meeting, if the board authorizes, we're not just going to dive in and do the count. We're going to contact PennDOT preliminarily and make sure there's not some fatal flaw, because we haven't even spoken to them since we don't have authorization. But we're not just going to dive in and blindly count everything. We're going to get in touch with PennDOT, let them know what the objective is, and if they identify something up front that's a fatal flaw, we're not going to go forward.
I can make a suggestion. Since the Public Works Committee is meeting in less than 2 weeks, perhaps this can be fully discussed at that meeting, and then if something comes in, bring it to the board, and we can make a decision at that point.
Yeah, we'll
And we'll give Richard time to review these comments.
Yeah. I'll ask Cassandra, she looks forward. How much money do we have in the traffic impact fee account?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
I mean, if the board's interested, since you have 2 weeks till the Public Works Committee meeting, I mean, we can put together a rough idea of the cost of what it would be in answer to Doug's comment earlier. If it's approved by PennDOT, the next step would be to change the condition diagram, that's what the plan is called, to reflect that that's on there, create the new phasing and so forth, and then pay for somebody to install the left turn arrow. We can come up with a ballpark figure on that if you want to know what that is.
Yeah, that'd be good. I'd like that.
We have about $65,000 in that account right now.
Bill, could you get that estimate together and get it to Commissioner Lansing for discussion?
We'll review it in committee.
And Bruce, do you want to get the email I sent?
I sent it, Rich.
Rich already has it, okay.
Okay, very good. Any further discussion from Public Works? Commissioner Reese?
I have nothing to add to Commissioner Lansing's excellent.
Oh, no meeting. General Administration Meeting Committee met this evening. As was previously discussed, we reviewed the library board members that have been approved by the board this evening, and we also reviewed the personnel policy for the township. What the township manager has done is taken the voluminous pages from a previous personnel policy and have consolidated all the elements that were in the previous policy into a more concise document. He with an attorney from our solicitor's firm who is an expert in personnel policy, has come up with an excellent document that has been reviewed by Commissioner Conrad and myself, and also with Ms. Williams. And a number of things have been noted, and it's being put back for further review, and will be brought before the board for its approval, and also distributed to personnel within the township so that they are aware of what's being done. And that there is nothing being changed to the current policy. It's just being clarified and made more of a concise document that's easily read and referred to.
Just real quickly, this the original one goes back to 1989. Obviously, there's some legal questions that are legal, some law that has changed that we need to upgrade.
Yeah.
So this all we're doing is putting that in. And Mr. Easterly, who was the I guess he's a labor attorney he did a great job for us in consolidating everything. And again, as you know, Ron and Ryan, what we went through or what we used to have. So this is really something that I want to thank Rich and the staff for getting this. Mr. Easter said it should be done tomorrow, so I'll make sure each of you get that copy tomorrow, and then the personnel will get it as well, and hopefully we can get this as adopted as a policy at our next meeting.
Great. Okay, Commissioner Connor, any comment?
No further comments.
Okay. Mr. Fosselman, under old business, do we need to discuss the item that's on our agenda?
No, I think we have that just for informational purposes. Yeah.
Okay. Anything on new business?
Nothing for the staff. Yeah.
Any public comment at the end of the agenda?
I would just like to
Simon earlier, Mr. Chairman, I have several quick comments. First of all, on that rezoning request that you're going to be hearing, I guess, with your planning commission next week at workshop on the 8-acre rezoning request, I would hope that the board would decide to either take no action on that request or deny that request for that rezoning, because I think there's two reasons why that rezoning should not go forward. The first one is that I think it would constitute spot zoning. I think it meets all the criteria of spot zoning, and I think that if you would go ahead and rezone it like that, you'd probably be successfully challenged on the spot zoning argument. And I would hope that, I would think you're probably going to seek some advice from your solicitor on whether that would constitute spot zoning before you would engage, before you might adopt that zoning. The other comment on the zoning, the reason I think it shouldn't be done at this point is because one of the main precedents that the request was made is they pointed out that the Jangle tracks right up the road, the 14 acres of frontage, were approved were rezoned for commercial. And they feel it would only be fair if this property not be rezoned for commercial. And I just want to, obviously the Jangle zoning is still under appeal, so it remains to be seen whether that zoning will remain in place. If we win the appeal, that commercial zoning will revert back to agricultural zoning, and therefore the precedent that they point out will not exist then. So I think those are two really good reasons why you should just either take no action or deny or decline the request to rezone that 8 acres of land. And I mean, actually, if you really are going to go and rezone that, I think the only way you're going to avoid a charge of spot zoning, you might as well just rezone that entire tract, that whole field there. But I think otherwise, it's clearly would be a case of spot zoning. And that's my comment on that. I know you're going to be have a workshop session on this next week.
No, it's actually, I just want to correct you, it's March 22nd, maybe you weren't in the room,
Oh,
but it's
okay.
been
a week from now.
yeah, it's been re-advertised.
Now,
The last two comments I'm going to quickly make.
You have a minute, Scott.
Okay, I'll get these in. You were talking about putting some poll questions up. I would like to repeat my request that you put a poll question on the web page, asking residents about whether they would approve the general rezoning or not. And just put it up there, not that it would be binding or anything, but just to see, to get a feel from the public how they feel about that. That would be the only reason to put that question up. And I would think that perhaps if you would decline to put that question up, it might be perceived that you would be afraid of the results of that survey. So just something I want to point out. And the last thing, I found it interesting that the board expressed their disappointment at not with this Representative Brown's legislation regarding the tax revenue going to the city, that you expressed some, express your disappointment that the township was not consulted or they didn't seek any consent when they want to dip in and take some of your tax revenue and transfer it to the city. And I would hope that that would now give you some idea of how the objectors and opponents to the zoning general change felt when you confidentially changed that zoning without seeking out any consent or consultation from the public.
Thank you, Scott.
Just a comment, Mr. President?
Sure.
I missed it when you come up. Did you state when you came up that you're still a resident of Upper Milford Township?
No, yes, I'm definitely a resident of Upper
Thank you.
Milford Township. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Appreciate you pointing that out to us.
Any other further public comment? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Sir,
I'm sorry, yes, Commissioner
one
Brown.
statement since you jumped over the Board of Commissioners reports. It's so appropriate that this be the final announcement of the evening or so. February 19th. February 19th starts Engineers Week. I think they gave us a whole week, and I think it's just very appropriate that we recognize our engineers. I've always noticed when there's no substitute for having a good engineer, because when your engineer screws up, you all look bad. But when they do it right, you can shine. And so they gave us a whole week. This is Engineers Week. I just want to say thank you to Bill, thank you to Alan, and the other engineers that are out there.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. Commissioner Reese wants to know if there's a homework. I'll still entertain a motion to adjourn. Second. Adjourn.